They called me weak, said I'd never make it through boot camp. My drill sergeant laughed when I struggled with push-ups, but when he collapsed during our final mission, bleeding and unconscious, I was the only one left standing. What happened next shocked everyone who doubted me. If you've ever been underestimated, this story will hit you right in the heart. Smash that like button if you're ready to see how karma works, and subscribe because you won't want to miss what happens when the doubters get proven wrong. My name is Riley, and I've always been the smallest person in any room I walk into. At 22, I barely weigh 110 pounds soaking wet, and I've heard every joke about my size that exists. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. It either breaks you or it builds something fierce inside you. For me, it built a fire that nobody could see burning. The day I stepped off that bus at Fort Benning, I knew I was walking into hell. The Georgia heat hit me like a wall, and I could already feel the sweat beading on my forehead. Around me, other recruits were getting off buses too, big guys with muscles that looked like they were carved from stone, tall women who looked like they could bench press me without breaking a sweat. And then there was me, clutching my duffel bag like it was a lifeline, trying to look like I belonged. My dad would have been proud to see me there. He died when I was 15, but not before he told me stories about his time in the service, how it made him into the man he became, how it taught him that strength isn't just about how much you can lift, it's about how much you can endure. I carried his dog tags in my pocket that first day, and I swear I could feel them burning against my leg like a reminder of why I was there. That's when I first saw Sergeant Torres, 6'2" of pure intimidation, with arms like tree trunks and a voice that could shake windows. He walked down the line of new recruits like a predator sizing up prey, and when his eyes landed on me, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Amusement. Not the good kind, the kind that told me he'd already written me off before I'd even opened my mouth. "Well, well," he said, stopping right in front of me. His shadow fell across my face, and I had to crane my neck just to meet his eyes. "What do we have here? Did someone's little sister get lost?" The other recruits snickered, and I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I kept my chin up and my mouth shut. "I asked you a question, recruit. You got a name, or should I just call you Tiny?" "Riley Martinez, sir," I managed to get out, and I was proud that my voice didn't shake. "Riley Martinez," he repeated slowly, like he was tasting something sour. "Let me guess. You're here to prove something. Maybe to Daddy? Or maybe you think this is some kind of adventure camp where you'll find yourself?" His smile was cruel, and I could feel every eye on us. "Well, let me save you some time and embarrassment, Martinez. This isn't a place for people like you. This is where we make real soldiers, not where we babysit kids playing dress-up." Standing next to me was Kane, a guy who looked like he was built in a gym and raised on protein shakes. He was everything I wasn't, tall, broad-shouldered, confident in a way that came from never having to prove himself. When Torres moved on to inspect him, it was like watching a teacher meet his favorite student. "Now this," Torres said, clapping Kane on the shoulder, "this is what a soldier looks like." Kane straightened up even more, if that was possible, and shot me a sideways look that was part pity, part smugness. "You paying attention, Martinez? This is your competition. Think you can keep up?" The other recruits were already forming their opinions. I could see it in their faces, the way they looked at Kane with respect and looked at me like I was a mistake someone had made in processing. They were already choosing sides, and I wasn't on the winning team. That night, lying on my narrow bunk, I could hear whispers from the other recruits, bets being placed on how long I'd last. Kane's voice was the loudest, predicting I'd be gone within a week. Maybe 2 if I was stubborn. They had no idea how stubborn I could be. Week 1 hit me like a freight train made of pure exhaustion and humiliation. Every morning started at 4:30 with Torres screaming us awake, and every morning his eyes would find me first, like I was his personal entertainment for the day. During our first physical training session, while other recruits knocked out push-ups like machines, I struggled to complete even 10. My arms shook, my form crumbled, and Torres stood over me like a vulture. "Martinez! What are you doing down there, taking a nap?" His voice boomed across the training ground, and I could hear snickers from the other recruits. "Get up! Give me 20 more!" My muscles screamed in protest, but I pushed through even as Kane effortlessly cranked out 50 beside me, making it look like child's play. By week 2, Torres had made me his special project. While everyone else got standard gear, I got the heaviest pack. While others ran the standard route, I had to take the long way. During rope climbing exercises, he'd stand at the bottom shaking the rope while I climbed, shouting up at me, "A real enemy won't wait for you to catch your breath, Martinez. Move your sorry butt." Kane had become Torres's unofficial assistant in making my life miserable. During mess hall, he'd sit with the other recruits and speak just loud enough for me to hear. "I give her 3 more days," he'd say, loading his tray with extra portions while I picked at my food, too exhausted to eat. My little sister could probably last longer than this. The others would laugh, and I'd sit alone at my table, Dad's dog tags feeling heavier in my pocket. Week 3 brought the breaking point Torres had been building toward. We were doing combat training exercises, learning to carry wounded soldiers. Torres paired everyone up by size and strength, everyone except me. "Martinez," he called out, and my heart sank. "Since you're so special, you get to work with me." At 180 pounds of solid muscle, Torres was nearly twice my weight. The exercise was simple: carry your partner 50 yards in a fireman's carry. I watched Kane effortlessly hoist his partner and stride across the field like it was nothing. When my turn came, I managed to get Torres onto my shoulders, but my knees buckled immediately. I hit the ground hard, with Torres landing beside me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Torres exploded. "Are you kidding me?" He shot to his feet, towering over me as I struggled to get up. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. In a real situation, people die because of weakness like this." He kicked my gear bag, sending my belongings scattering across the dirt. "You think this is a game? You think your good intentions matter when bullets are flying?" His face was inches from mine now, and I could feel spit flying as he yelled, "You're weak, Martinez." Pathetically, dangerously weak. "You'll get real soldiers killed." The words hit me like physical blows, but what hurt more was seeing the looks on the other recruits' faces. Some looked uncomfortable, but others nodded in agreement. Kane was practically smiling. Something broke inside me then, but it wasn't my spirit. It was my patience. I looked Torres straight in the eye, my voice barely a whisper but steady as steel. "I won't quit, sir." The words surprised even me with their certainty. Torres laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We'll see about that, Martinez. We'll see about that." That night, while the others slept, I snuck out to the training grounds. Under the pale moonlight, I filled sandbags with rocks, progressively making them heavier. I practiced the fireman's carry with logs, with equipment, with anything I could find that had weight to it. My body screamed in protest, but I kept Dad's voice in my head, telling me about the soldiers who didn't make it home because they gave up when things got hard. Week after week I trained in secret. While Kane and the others slept soundly, confident in their abilities, I was out there in the darkness, building something they couldn't see. My muscles adapted, my endurance grew, and most importantly, my resolve hardened into something unbreakable. Torres announced our final test on a Friday morning that felt charged with electricity. 20-mile wilderness survival exercise, he declared, his eyes sweeping over us with particular attention to me. "This separates the soldiers from the pretenders." Kane whispered to his buddies, loud enough for me to hear, "Martinez won't make it past mile 5. I'll bet my next leave on it." They had no idea what was coming. The morning of our final exercise dawned gray and oppressive, with humidity so thick you could practically swim through it. We stood in formation at the edge of the wilderness training area, 60 pounds of gear strapped to our backs, looking out at 20 miles of unforgiving Georgia terrain. Torres paced in front of us like a caged animal, his usual swagger cranked up to 11. "This is it, recruits," he barked, his voice cutting through the morning mist. 20 miles of hell, and if you can't hack it, you don't belong here." His eyes found mine in the formation, and that familiar, cruel smile played at the corners of his mouth. Some of you have been coasting on dreams and good intentions. Today, reality bites back. Kane stood 3 people down from me, looking like he was carved from granite, barely breaking a sweat in the oppressive heat. When Torres gave the signal to move out, Kane shot me that same condescending look he'd been giving me for weeks. "Try to keep up, Martinez," he muttered as we began our march into the wilderness. The first 5 miles were brutal but manageable. My secret training had paid off more than I'd dared hope. While other recruits were already struggling with the pace Torres set, my legs felt strong, my breathing steady. I watched Kane glance back at me with surprise when I kept up with the main group instead of falling behind like he'd predicted. By mile 10, the real suffering began. The Georgia sun had burned through the morning clouds, turning our march into a furnace walk. Sweat poured down everyone's faces, and even the strongest recruits were starting to show signs of strain. But not Torres. He pushed us harder, faster, like he was trying to prove some twisted point about who deserved to be there. "Pick up the pace," he shouted from the front of the group. "War doesn't slow down because you're tired." I could see him wiping sweat from his forehead, but his voice never wavered, his stride never faltered. He was a machine, and he expected us to be machines too. Mile 12 changed everything in the space of a heartbeat. Torres had just finished screaming at a recruit who'd stumbled when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. His hand flew to his chest, and for the first time since I'd known him, uncertainty flickered across his face. He took 2 more steps, then staggered like someone had hit him with an invisible club. "Sergeant!" Kane called out, but Torres didn't answer. His breathing became labored, harsh gasps that cut through the forest sounds. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and shaking. Then he collapsed. 180 pounds of solid muscle hit the forest floor like a felled tree. The sound echoed through the trees, followed by a silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Torres lay there, unconscious, his chest barely rising and falling. Panic rippled through our group like wildfire. Some recruits froze completely, others started talking at once. Kane, for all his confidence and bravado, looked like a deer in headlights. "What do we do?" he kept repeating. "What are we supposed to do?" "We need to get help," someone suggested. "Radio for evacuation," another recruit added. But we all knew we were 8 miles from base camp through terrain no vehicle could navigate. "Maybe we should leave him and send help back," Kane said, and something cold settled in my stomach. "I mean, someone needs to stay with him, but the rest of us could run back faster without..." "Without what?" I found myself saying, stepping forward. "Without carrying him?" Kane looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Martinez, be realistic. None of us can carry him 8 miles. He weighs 180 and that's dead weight." I knelt beside Torres, checking his pulse like we'd been trained. It was weak but steady. Heat exhaustion combined with something more serious, maybe a heart condition he'd never mentioned. He needed medical attention and he needed it fast. "I'll carry him," I said quietly, and the words surprised everyone, including myself. The laughter started immediately. "You?" Kane couldn't contain himself. "Martinez, you can barely carry your own pack. You think you can haul him 8 miles?" I looked down at Torres, unconscious and vulnerable, nothing like the intimidating figure who'd tormented me for weeks. "Someone has to," I said, already calculating how to get him into position. "I won't leave him behind." "This is insane," Kane muttered, but he didn't offer an alternative. I hoisted Torres into a fireman's carry, his full weight settling across my shoulders like a mountain. My knees buckled for just a moment, but then that fire I'd been building for weeks ignited fully. The march home began. 8 miles had never felt longer in my entire life. Every step was a battle between my burning muscles and my iron will. Torres's unconscious weight pressed down on my shoulders like the world itself, but I kept moving. Behind me, Kane and the others followed in stunned silence, no longer making jokes or placing bets on my endurance. My legs trembled with each step, my back screamed in protest, and sweat poured down my face like rain. But every time I wanted to quit, I heard Dad's voice in my head. "Strength isn't about what you can lift, Riley. It's about what you can carry when everything depends on it." Torres had called me weak, but here I was, carrying him through 8 miles of hell when no one else would even try. The weather turned against us halfway through, as if the universe wanted to test just how much I could endure. Dark clouds rolled in, and rain began falling in sheets, turning the forest floor into slippery mud. Each step became treacherous, but I adjusted my grip on Torres and kept pushing forward. Kane slipped twice on the muddy terrain, cursing under his breath, but I stayed upright, focused on nothing but putting one foot in front of the other. By mile 6, I could hear Kane breathing hard behind me. "Martinez," he panted, and for the first time his voice held no mockery. Maybe I could try to help." I didn't stop walking. "Now you want to help?" My voice was steady despite the fire in my lungs. 8 miles ago you wanted to leave him." The base camp lights appeared through the trees like salvation itself. My vision was blurring from exhaustion, my shoulders were numb from Torres' weight, but I pushed through those final yards with everything I had left. Medics rushed toward us as soon as they saw us emerge from the tree line, and only when they lifted Torres from my shoulders did I allow my knees to give out. "You saved his life," one of the medics told me as they loaded Torres onto a stretcher. "Heat stroke combined with an undiagnosed heart condition. If you'd waited for rescue, he wouldn't have made it." Torres regained consciousness as they were prepping him for transport to the medical facility. His eyes were unfocused at first, but when they found my face, I saw something I'd never seen before: shame. Raw, undeniable shame mixed with recognition of what had just happened. The next morning brought a formation unlike any I'd experienced. Torres stood at the front, still pale but upright, his usual commanding presence somehow different. Humbled. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its typical cruel edge. "Yesterday, I learned something about real strength," he began, his eyes scanning our formation before settling on me. "I spent weeks telling recruit Martinez she was weak. I called her pathetic. I said she'd get real soldiers killed." His jaw tightened with what looked like physical pain. "I was wrong. Dead wrong." Kane shifted uncomfortably beside me, his earlier confidence nowhere to be found. "When I collapsed yesterday, Martinez didn't hesitate. She didn't calculate odds or look for easier options. She carried me 8 miles through terrain that broke stronger recruits." Torres stepped forward, stopping directly in front of me. "That's what a real soldier looks like. That's what real strength looks like." Kane tried to salvage something from the wreckage of his ego. "Sir, we all helped support—" Torres cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. "You suggested leaving me behind, Kane." I remember that conversation. Kane's face flushed red as every recruit in formation turned to look at him. Martinez was the only one willing to do what needed to be done. The weeks that followed were a complete transformation. Torres personally recommended me for advanced leadership training, and suddenly I found myself as squad leader for our final exercises. Kane, who had spent weeks predicting my failure, now had to take orders from the person he'd mocked. The other recruits who had ignored me or joined in the ridicule now sought my respect, my advice, my approval. On graduation day, I stood at attention with Dad's dog tags around my neck and his Medal of Honor pinned to my uniform, a gift Torres had arranged. As I looked out at the crowd, I thought about that scared girl who had stepped off the bus weeks ago, certain she didn't belong. They saw weakness where strength was building. They heard doubt where determination was growing. The same voice that whispered, "You can't," became the voice that screamed, "Watch me." Sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the one everyone needs. Sometimes carrying someone else's weight is exactly what reveals your own strength, and sometimes karma is as simple as proving them all wrong when it matters most. That moment when Alex proved them all wrong? That's the power of never giving up on yourself. If this story inspired you to keep pushing when others doubt you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when it matters most.